No, I will not introduce myself. I would like to take the time just to give a few maybe ideas about AI and music. It's a huge topic now. Conferences every day and so forth and so forth. I've been doing this for quite a long time myself, and I thought, this question is interesting. Did we solve the problem or not? By the way, which problem? Of course, this is included in the question. So I just want to give you a little bit of a few statements. The first thing I want to say, it has nothing to do with AI. It's the first time in the human history. I mean, usually the sentences that start like that are pretty boring, but it's really the first time in our history that almost everyone has access to almost everything. And I'm talking about cultural artifacts, the ones which are digitized. And here, by the way, I'm talking about mainstream music. I'm not talking about experimental music or other things that we have been talking this morning about. But the mainstream music, the situation is crazy. We have everyone now has almost for free about 100 million titles available. And each day there is about 700 times more titles produced than a few decades ago. It's totally crazy, and it's too much to have any idea of actually what's inside these catalogs. We have to accept that we will never know exactly, or even have any rough idea of what there is in all these catalogs. And this is totally new. It's called the Society of Abundance by the ethnologist, And there are lots of problems with this that we don't really know how to handle, and they have nothing to do with AI. And so AI arrives, is coming in this domain at a moment which is already very special, very strange, and problematic. This is, I hope, a bit provocative, but I will run away after the talk anyway, so I don't care. But there are many people who say that the musical level of mainstream music, is declining. It's like people like Rick Beato, for those of you who know him. In France, a guy, jazz pianist, has made a very interesting analysis of the James Bond movie, music. Because they all share the same theme, James Bond theme, and so you can see really on during maybe 30 years how things are evolving and really declining in many dimensions. I will not focus on this today, but like harmonic complexity, diversity, complexity in general, and so forth. And there are also scientific papers studying this, like from the signal perspective, showing that there is a decline. So this is a situation today, and the reason why I have been studying AI for mainstream music was actually with the hope that AI could be used to make more interesting music. That was my objective initially. I don't know if I succeeded, but so this is a situation: more and more music, and a level which is declining. I don't know if some of you have tried to listen to Taylor Swift. I can't. She has a total of currently 85 billion streams. She's the most streamed artist in the history of mankind. And I don't know what there is to listen to. So there is a problem here, but that is interesting in itself, actually. And there are some theories which are really, but it's not the point today. I'm just setting up the landscape. And now you have AI. So AI, lots of different AI. So I want just to play a little extract from Suno, not Sumo, as you have heard probably. And the prompt was something like play a jazz big band with the word shit inside in the lyrics. And so I will play it, but I am asking you to, how to say in English, to beat the time, right? I'm asking you, what is the time signature? Is it like, usually big jazz is usually 4/4, can be 3/4, but is it what is it, So please beat the time.
We're getting love, we're getting hugs, but the side is fucking down, the side is fucking down. Oh shit! We appreciate you and we want your sign-ups but the side is fucking down.
So you can try it. There is no time signature. It sounds really, I think it sounds great as a jazz, jazz background, but there is no time signature. It's locally perfect. It's not global. So the system has no idea what is 3/4, 4/4, or whatever. And so, sorry. So many people say, okay, AI music is very spectacular, lots of things, but we are not there yet. This is thing recently, but many people say, okay, it's not yet able to do really what we would like to do, even if it's not well defined. So there is a problem which is very often shown like this one, it's basically these systems, they don't know what they are doing. This is true for ChatGPT, but it's true also for this AI, which works only at kind of a very superficial level, even if it's at the audio level, but still superficial in the sense that there is no underlying structure or knowledge of time signature, harmony, melody, or even the lyrics. They don't, And so, and these are very interesting subjects that many people in AI are working on, how to build a system that really are more grounded and understand more what they do. So the other thing I wanted to do in the time I have is I have actually 4 ideas that maybe kind of explain why we're not there yet. What are the big problems we have with this idea of generating music, generating mainstream music again? I'm not talking like exploratory stuff. And at the time, I will talk only about the 3rd item. And if you're interested, we can talk about the other ones. I go very quickly about the first one. I mean, we have talked about that this morning, The first thing is that because, oops, sorry, I skipped, by the way, yes, I skipped the first one because I don't have the time. The second one is, because we are in a university, we are all researchers, so we are always trying to do better things, So obviously a transformer is better than an LSTM, which is better than the models we had before, which is better than the Markov chain, and also we have all increasingly better models, but it does not mean that the music we do with them is necessarily better. So here I encourage you to listen to the Iliac Suite, so it's on the YouTube very, very briefly. This was composed in '56, and the idea was to take inspiration from Bach chorales. It doesn't work. Well, so it saves time. Oh, yeah, it doesn't work. And it was first order Markov chains done by hand, no training, all the probabilities were input by hand. And you can listen to this, it's on the web. And then so 60 years later, we did at Sony, but many people also did that kind of stuff like modeling Bach chorales with LSTMs at that time. And they are both these 2 things are both trying to solve the same problem, how can we generate Bach-like music? And it's obvious that with the models we have today, it works much, much better than the models we had 60 years ago. There is no comparison. But the question is, which one is more interesting? It's an interesting exercise. If you just try to listen to these things, and then the day after, you ask yourself the question, which one of these 2 things I like to listen to again? Which one is more interesting? So obviously, the second one is so perfect, it sounds just like an exercise. Not very interesting. The second one is very imperfect, but has lots of surprises in there. So it's just to say, okay, that better models is what we do, but it does not imply at all more interesting music. Okay, but I will, oops, sorry. So I want to focus only on this idea of that basically what I'm trying to say here is we don't understand anything about what it is to listen to music. And the fact that we have these huge databases, this huge amount of people listening to music all the time, only stresses this thing, that we actually don't understand anything about music. The idea that people have about music judgment is basically I like this or I don't like, that kind of stuff, Boolean things. So we have been at Spotify, we've been studying what I think is a very interesting way to look at how people listen to music. by looking at what is called skip profiles. So skip profiles, so the thing is, when people listen to music today, mostly young people on smartphones, they listen to something and they skip to the next song very often. So why do they skip, by the way? Because all the music now is in playlists. So playlist means that there is something after, unless it's the last one. But then they skip to another playlist, right? So there is a next button. And so Paul Lamer, a few years ago, was interested in seeing when do people skip? And all the titles, they have the same average profile. So most of the people skip in the first seconds. Like you have a big bump initially, and then it kind of stabilizes. So it looks a bit like a long tail thing, more or less. And there are some differences between boys and girls, age, but it's more or less that kind of stuff. So what we have done is we have looked at inside, removing the very beginning and the very end. By the way, there is also a bump at the end because the song is finished, so necessarily they skip to the next one, right? So we were interested in the middle part. And what we got is that kind of stuff upstairs. So here you have to understand X is time, and Y is the number of people that skip the song at that time, right? So you see lots of people at the beginning, and then a kind of bumpy road in the middle. And we have discovered two things that I think are completely incredible. So this skip profile is independent of time. So you take a title, you take the skip profile, you look at it. You take the same title 3 months later, the skip profile is not exactly the same, but it has exactly the same shape with the same bumps at the same place, right? Which is very strange because you could imagine that the people who have listened to the title, probably there are new ones, and the people who have listened to the title, why would they skip at the same time each time they listen to that title, right? So it's a bit strange, but it's true, and we thought it was a bug, and it's not a bug. And then we discovered another thing, which is that it's also independent on space. So you take the same title in Europe and in the States, for instance, and you have exactly the same skip profile, and you are sure that these are not the same people there, right? And it's so constant that you can actually consider the skip profile as a DNA of the song. And we showed in this paper you can actually reconstruct the audio from the skip profile. It's very precise. It's a millisecond or less than a millisecond, which is kind of crazy because you could imagine that when people listen to music, it would be like more random, right? Especially when it's constantly new people coming on. It's not always the same people listening to music. And so why it's interesting, first of all, it's the only domain I know there where you can really study very, very closely what people do. You don't have this with books, for instance. You don't have this with paintings, or I don't know. And then it's only the beginning, because of course the next question is why, what happens during these bumps, why these bumps are there. And so we looked at this, and we observed something which is quite maybe obvious, but there are bumps when something happens in the music. Like the solo starts, the singer stops singing, the drum changes the pattern. There is what we call a musical event of some sort. Which leads to this paradox, which is that if you want to have a song where people don't skip, just make music where nothing happens. Which there is a lot, by the way, in the platforms, like, ambient music, you have a drone sound for hours, and it's true. And so these songs have very flat skip profile. The problem is that they don't have a lot of streams. By the way, this is normalized between 0 and 1. It's not absolute numbers, it's just the shape. So the paradox is that if you want to have something with lots of streams, you have to have lots of people skipping all the time. And you see, who understands anything about that? In the music industry, in the musicians, the labels, no one understands how to make a song that's interesting, right? No one, absolutely no one. But today we have the data. This data, and we will have probably more and more of this. This data, I think, is a way to start really investigating what it means to listen to music and what it means to like or not like music. For an individual, for a community in time, in space? All these are totally open questions, right? Okay, so I think I still have a few seconds or not? No? Yes? So the fourth idea, so there is a problem with, I just said, there is a paradox with listening. We don't know what is listening. We don't know also what is creating in the following sense. So what we have tried to do at Spotify was to build tools for music creations with AI, even if Miller does not like it. But I hope we can fight about this later. But, you know, the question was reasonable. How can we give these tools to musicians? And what we have observed is that when you give a better generator, whatever you mean by better, it did not always imply that the users were more satisfied, although the quality would be clearly better, right? And so what we arrived at the conclusion is that there is probably, or surely, something that we can call, that is called the IKEA effect. So IKEA effect was discovered in the 60s by a bunch of Americans who decided to sell these powders. You know, like powder, you put this powder in a pan, and then you put water, and then you have a great chocolate cake, which is fantastic. It works very well. It was a total failure from a business viewpoint. And then a very smart guy said, okay, let's remove the eggs and force the people to put real eggs. And then it became a big success. And so the IKEA effect is the thing that is now studied in psychology and also economics, that people put more value, ascribe more value to stuff when they are contribute to making them, which is kind of irrational, if you think about it, but it's totally true, and it's a very massive effect. And so what we kind of think is that there is an IKEA effect at stake when you use tools, and AI tools in particular, for creation. That is, what it means that if the tool is too good and you don't have a lot of intervention at the end, you don't think it's yours. I mean, you have this with the Suno and Udio things. You click, you get something that's sometimes quite spectacular, but you don't feel that it's yours, really. And so from the viewpoint of user interaction and selling, you know, software, it's a failure, because if the users don't want to put their name on it, then it's, even if the song is nice or interesting, it's a failure, right? And so in the end, what is at stake is that the feeling of the sense of appropriation is probably as important, maybe more, than the intrinsic quality of whatever that you're generating with AI. And this, we have no idea how it works. I mean, there is the IKEA effect, but of course you should contribute to the result, but not too much. I mean, otherwise you are back to square one when you didn't have tools, right? So what is the trade-off, the good trade-off for generating a sense of appropriation? So that's, I think, is the main, is a very important question, not only for music, by the way, but for everything that use generative AI, and it's a totally empty field, as far as I know. So the problem is solved, yes. It has been solved for a long time, AI and music, actually, for a very long time. The thing is that now we have new problems, like the ones I mentioned, paradox of listening, the sense of appropriation, and the fact, I didn't talk about that, the fact that generating music is not a well-defined problem. We have addressed this this morning somehow, but yet we pretend it is well-defined. So for instance, we have algorithms like transformers based on gradient search, propagating errors. And so errors mean something when you have a well-defined problem, but when you don't have a well-defined problem, what is the error? You know, so it doesn't make any sense. But so we use them anyway to have fun, right? But it's a problem to pretend that we are dealing with well-defined problems. So the problem solved, yes, but the new problems are much more difficult. Thank you.